It began with snow. Thick, heavy, endless snow. The kind that silences entire landscapes and makes every sound feel distant, almost sacred. In March 1989, a group of young hikers from Tokyo set out for what was meant to be a simple winter climb up Mount Asahi, the highest peak in Hokkaido. They were experienced, well-equipped, and led by a veteran instructor. Nothing about their journey suggested disaster. Yet within 48 hours, the mountain would become their grave. The Asahi Dake climb was part of a university mountaineering program, routine, structured, almost ceremonial in its repetition. Every year, new students tested themselves against Japan's northern wilderness, learning to navigate snow, wind, and ice. The group of 7 that winter was disciplined and confident. They left Asahikawa on March 11th, their destination clear. Reach the summit, camp overnight, and descend by morning. The weather forecast promised light snowfall. The winds were moderate. Nothing about the mountain warned them away. By the second day, their progress slowed. Temperatures dropped sharply as a pressure front rolled in from the Sea of Okhotsk. The wind shifted, rising from whispers to roars, sweeping through the valley with the force of a freight train. Snowfall thickened into a wall of white, swallowing landmarks and burying trails within minutes. The group pushed forward, relying on compass and memory, but visibility fell to 0. When rescuers later traced their route, they realized the hikers had strayed only a few hundred meters off course before disaster began to unfold. At some point, their tents were pitched on an exposed slope rather than the planned sheltered basin. What happened next remains one of Japan's strangest and most haunting mountain tragedies. According to the only survivor, a young man found half-conscious days later. The night was chaos. The storm intensified without warning. Temperatures plunged below -20, and the wind tore at their tents until the fabric shredded. Inside, panic spread quickly. One by one, the climbers began to behave erratically. Some screamed that they couldn't breathe, clawing at their clothes. Others tried to run barefoot into the snow. The leader shouted orders, trying to regain control, but within minutes, the group had splintered, vanishing into the whiteout. Rescuers would later find their bodies scattered across a radius of just a few hundred meters. None showed signs of violent struggle. Some were found half-dressed, others curled in fetal positions, their faces twisted in expressions that defied easy description. Not terror, not pain, but something else entirely. The survivor was delirious when found. He had wandered for more than 24 hours, frostbitten and dehydrated, his recollections fragmented and surreal. He spoke of pressure in the ears, of a suffocating silence, and of seeing his companions collapse one by one. Doctors at the hospital noted confusion consistent with exposure and hypothermia, but his pulse quickened every time he tried to recall the night itself. The autopsies revealed little. No trauma, no poisoning, no internal damage beyond what cold could inflict. Yet one finding stood out. Tiny ruptures in the blood vessels of the eyes and lungs, consistent with sudden internal pressure, as though each had been subjected to a powerful wave of force or panic. The exact cause was listed as acute hypothermic shock, a phrase that satisfied no one. Local mountaineers began calling it Japan's Dyatlov Pass. The parallels were uncanny. An experienced team, a sudden storm, a pattern of irrational behavior and deaths that defied all conventional explanation. Theories flourished in the months that followed. Some blamed carbon monoxide from the stoves inside their tents. Others suggested avalanche trauma, though no evidence of a slide was found. A few whispered about the mountain itself. Ancient spirits, kami angered by intrusion, or the voice of the snow that drives men to madness. But the strangest details refused to fade. Why had they pitched camp on the exposed ridge when their instructor knew better? Why did several members strip off their gloves and boots in freezing conditions? And why did the survivor, when asked what he remembered last, simply whisper, "It was quiet. Too quiet." Like the mountain was breathing for decades. Mount Asahi's tragedy has lingered in Japan's collective memory, not for its scale, but for its silence. It remains a wound carved into the snow, a story with no villain, no warning, and no sense. The official record ends with the words, "Death by exposure." But those who have seen the photographs, who have read the survivors' trembling notes, understand something deeper, that this was no ordinary storm. Something unseen came for them that night. And whatever it was, it left behind no sound, no prints, and no mercy. Only the mountain and the silence that followed. When the storm finally cleared, the rescue teams began their ascent. What they found would haunt Japan's mountaineering community for decades. The ridge was silent, no movement, no trace of life, just an ocean of snow sculpted by the wind into cruel shapes. Yet within that stillness lay the evidence of a night that defied every known rule of survival. The first body was discovered near the remnants of the main tent, partially buried. The man's posture was calm, his arms folded across his chest as though asleep. His face was pale but peaceful. Only his open eyes betrayed the horror of what had happened. A few meters away lay another climber, kneeling forward in the snow as if he had been praying. His hands were bare, his fingers blue, frozen mid-gesture. Further down the slope, searchers uncovered two more, one lying face down, the other sprawled sideways, both stripped of outer clothing despite the sub-zero cold. The absence of tracks suggested they hadn't fled. They had simply collapsed where they stood. By the end of the second day, all 6 missing climbers had been found. Each body told a story of confusion and surrender. Their positions formed a rough semicircle around the camp, as though they had all turned toward something before dying. There were no signs of violence, no indication of panic in the snow patterns. Only the quiet choreography of a group succumbing to something unseen. The sole survivor's condition improved slowly, and his testimony became the cornerstone of the investigation. He recalled the wind beginning to hum, not like normal wind, but with a deep, resonant tone that vibrated in the chest. It grew louder, almost unbearable, until it felt like the air itself was pressing against them. Some began screaming that their ears hurt. Others said their hearts were racing too fast. Then, the tent collapsed inward. What followed was chaos. Some ran into the storm. Others clawed at their clothes, gasping for air that seemed to vanish from their lungs. He remembered seeing one of them laughing hysterically before falling first into the snow. The rest blurred into darkness. Psychologists later suggested a shared psychotic episode induced by stress, isolation, and oxygen deprivation. But meteorologists pointed to something stranger, a rare meteorological event known as a katabatic wind. These are violent, cold air currents that rush down mountainsides with immense force, often invisible until they strike. The pressure changes they create can cause sudden disorientation, even hallucinations. But that explanation failed to account for the most disturbing clue. When rescuers examined the site, They noticed the tent's poles had been bent outward, not inward, as if something had exploded from within. And yet, there was no burn, no fire, no damage suggesting combustion. Only air pressure, enough to deform metal. In the weeks that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the hikers had encountered an experimental aircraft or military test. The Japan Self-Defense Forces operated in the region, and locals swore they saw strange lights in the sky that night. Others spoke of snow spirits or Yuki-onna, the ghostly woman of the mountains said to lure travelers to their deaths. But the most unsettling theory came from those who studied the photographs taken before the tragedy. The group's last images show them smiling, joking, unaware. Yet one frame stood out. A blurred shot of the sky streaked with light. Analysts dismissed it as snow glare, but the survivor insisted it was taken moments before the wind changed. Asahi, the mountain of sunrise, had become a mountain of silence. The case was eventually closed as an accident, the files sealed under bureaucratic indifference. The survivor withdrew from public life, refusing interviews, vanishing into anonymity. He never climbed again. Those who knew him said he was haunted by one recurring dream. The sound of a low, droning hum rising from beneath the snow, followed by stillness. Even now, mountaineers speak of the Asahi Effect. Radios cut out unexpectedly near the ridge. Compass needles spin, and in the dense fog that rolls over the slopes at dusk, some say you can hear faint voices, as if the mountain still echoes the last breaths of those who perished there. To this day, no one can explain why 6 experienced hikers died within meters of safety, under conditions they had survived before. No one can explain the pressure patterns on their bodies, the bent tent poles, or the fact that the survivor's watch had stopped precisely at 2:17 a.m., the same time lightning was reported over the Sea of Okhotsk, hundreds of kilometers away. The official report called it a coincidence, but those who have seen the mountain say otherwise. There are places where nature doesn't simply kill, it chooses, where the cold becomes sentient and the air itself turns against you. Mount Asahi remains one of those places, a peak of snow and silence, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying thing about death isn't the violence, it's the calm that comes before it.